On today's episode, I have the super lovely Georgia Locke. Georgia is an actor, presenter, poet, and an OCD advocate. She is super creative and she's written her own poetry collection book and is also a musician and singer. So we're definitely going to have a lot to talk about in this episode, I think. So Georgia, do you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks so much for my lovely intro. That was so kind. Hi, I'm Georgia. I like to write stuff. I like to act and have OCD.
Excellent. I like that. That was a short, sharp intro.
I always I just get so shy sometimes. I think people think because I act that maybe I'm not, but that's kind of why I like to act, because then, you're being someone else a bit, aren't you?
Yeah, and it's always really awkward for someone to be like, you're this, 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 and this.
I know. I was like, that was so nice. How do I follow that? I don't know what to say.
No, it was good. It was quick and I liked it.
Thank you. Thanks for such a nice one.
It's okay. You are obviously a very creative being, and I should probably say how I came across you in the world.
Oh,
and
please.
I follow you on Instagram, and I see that you're like a really big OCD advocate, and I like to chat to people on my podcast from sort of different walks of life, and I thought you'd be a really interesting person to chat to.
Thank you. I'm flattered.
Maybe we could start with a little bit of background to you and your life, if you don't mind, and your kind of diagnosis of OCD when you got that.
Yeah, so I started acting sort of professionally when I was 12. I got a part in a show on CBBC, which was great fun, really good time. And I did that for 3 years. And then some other shows on the same channel came up. And then when I was 17, I started working with Disney Channel and did a few things with them. Some really, wonderful opportunities. I'm very grateful for them. And then at 22, OCD decided to show up in my life. And, I think it affects everyone differently. Some people, they don't remember a time without OCD. Some people, it sort of happens kind of gradually. And some people, it just comes in a day, like it came for myself. It really felt like something just switched. And the problem with OCD is, it's so deeply misunderstood. And that is, it's so dangerous because it really prevents a lot of people getting the help that they need. Like, you can't get help if you don't know what you're suffering with. And personally, it would never have crossed my mind that what I was going through was OCD. Even in the world of therapy, it's misunderstood. There's a lot of unhelpful therapy out there for OCD, which is really scary as well. And I think, diagnosis can just take so long. I was so lucky with mine because I know I've got friends, that it took them sort of 10 years to get diagnosed. It can take longer. It's just so, because it looks like so many other things, I think, OCD, because it can just attack anything in a person's life, and so it's really hard to know what it is. And of course, the media stereotypes of it being about, liking things tidy are just so unhelpful and completely incorrect. So it's really difficult because I'm so messy, and it would never have occurred to me. I had heard the incorrect stereotypes too, and it would never have crossed my mind that what I was going through was OCD, because I really just felt like I'd gone mad. I was terrified that I'd lost my mind and I didn't know what was going on. But I was super lucky. I saw a therapist who doesn't teach CBT. She doesn't teach ERP. She is more like I don't know really what the word is, but more like a traditional sort of talking therapist. And talking therapy, where you sort of analyze your thoughts and discuss them, is not helpful for OCD. You don't want that. The whole point is we need to learn that our thoughts are not that important and they don't really mean anything about us as people. And she and there's a lot of talking therapists that think that that's, they say that they treat OCD, but they actually don't. That's actually quite harmful for OCD. So I was so lucky because I didn't know what was going on. So I just saw a therapist. And after about 3 sessions, she was like, I think it sounds like you have OCD. So maybe you should get some therapy for that. And, that sentence, it seems so simple, but that effectively saved my life. It saved me so much suffering. I was in such a dark place. And, it's just mad how I realize now how fortunate I was, because the amount of time it takes some people to get diagnosed is just unfathomable, really.
That's really interesting to hear it coming on sort of later on in your life. And I think that is quite a sort of thing with OCD, that it's more kind of in your 20s.
Yeah, early 20s is quite common, yeah.
Like you say, there's a lot of misconceptions. People don't realize it's not all physical, like, kind of, I don't
No,
know,
not at
germs, hand
all.
washing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of mental, like, obsessing and overthinking and cycling through thoughts.
Absolutely. There's a lot of rumination and stuff. I think people think that, they sort of know the stereotype of, oh, maybe like they like things organized, which is, there's nothing
Mm.
to do with liking anything in OCD. It's not about liking stuff. You get, it's made up of obsession. So which is like, as you said, like an unwanted thought or image or urge that repeatedly enters your mind and causes you extreme anxiety. And then the sufferer feels like to get rid of that extreme anxiety because it's so unbearable, they have to engage in a compulsion. And so, yeah, it can manifest in kind of cleaning compulsions,
Mhm.
but they are never, ever enjoyable. So maybe the thought will be, oh my gosh, this isn't clean enough. And if I prepare food on it, perhaps that, it's not clean enough. So it could kill someone, it could like harm them. So now, I've got to relentlessly scrub it to make sure it's clean. Like compulsions can be extremely like tiring and distressing. And you don't want to, like, no one ever wants to engage in a compulsion. It's just that it might provide, as upsetting as they can be, they can also provide sort of temporary relief. But in the long run, compulsions are fueling the
Mm.
obsessive compulsive cycle. And that's, it's just a really difficult thing to sort of deal with.
Yeah, definitely. And it's the fact that, it's only you in your head. No one else is, you can't explain, no one can kind of step into your shoes for the day and understand what
Yeah.
it's like.
I think it's a disorder that is easily isolating because the painful thing about it is as well is often what you're doing is illogical, and especially as you also mentioned before about compulsions being in your head as well, which is very much a thing.
Mm.
Compulsions don't have to be physical, and when you're in that kind of spiral in your head, it's really yeah, very isolating and very hard to explain because it doesn't make any sense. Like you
Mhm.
kind of know that, but then there's just that part of you that's like, but I don't know.
Exactly. And no matter, someone telling you, or trying to reassure you,
Mm,
it's never quite enough, I can imagine.
absolutely. And reassurance is actually like, you shouldn't reassure someone with OCD. It's bad because it like
Mm.
it it can never, someone with OCD is like it's like you can't tolerate uncertainty. You're craving 100% certainty, and the thing is that's not ever achievable. Is it certainty? I'm not sure. You know what I mean. But it's like
Yeah.
that's not a thing. And the more that like reassurance just kind of fuels OCD as well. But it's so hard because I can imagine it's hard for the loved ones of those with OCD because it's like you can see them suffering and you'd love to just reassure them, just to give them
Mm.
a moment's sort of peace. But it won't work. And it definitely won't work in the long run because, reassurance is sort of, it's giving the OCD power in a way because it's responding with it, it's engaging with it.
Mhm. No, definitely. I think in the past few years, you're kind of seeing more and more people talking about it online, and I think that is opening up the discussion a bit and people understanding that, it's not these common kind of things that you see like in TV shows. Like it's the same when I see, like, I'm autistic and I see autism being represented.
Is it really frustrating?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can
Yeah.
only imagine, if you're seeing something like that on TV, someone with OCD, and it's a very typical kind of, standard way, you're not being reflected.
So painful, isn't it? You just think if you're going to write something, with either of the conditions or like I don't is
Mm.
could you say condition? I don't know how like I never know the best words to say, but like
Oh, I'm the same, don't worry.
yeah, I know, but even like the things that we go through, like you just think why can't they just Google it? Like just Google it. I
I
don't know.
know.
I just think or just write about something that I don't
Mm.
understand what this need is um to do these. My mum is a different thing because it's not a mental like health disorder or it's not um I don't know what's the word for autism. Do I say it's not a mental health disorder? How do I is that the what's the right thing to
It's
say?
I guess it's like a neurological disorder, so I guess it is a disorder. Yeah.
Neurological. Right. Okay. My cousin's autistic and I probably should know that. I'm really sorry.
It's all right. I
um
think people kind of choose different terms to suit them, I guess.
Right.
So
Okay.
don't
Yeah.
worry.
Okay. Sorry. I worry
It's all
so
right.
much about phrasing stuff.
Oh, me too.
It's stressful, isn't it? But my
Yeah.
mum, like, she had this problem with her eye or something. I forget what happened now, like a split retina or something. I don't know. But so I was a
Mhm.
lot younger. But she had this sort of special chair in the living room for a long time because she had to keep her head like down for like a month. Like she couldn't move. It was really
Oh, wow.
stressful. Yeah. But you can't, like, you have to face down. It's really important. And then they sort of did it on one of the soaps, and he was lying back in a bed. And you just think, if you want him to
Right.
be lying back in a bed, like this character, just choose something that enables that. Why are you just getting it so wrong? I don't know.
Yeah,
It's just things like that. You just think, how funny that you wouldn't bother researching it a
yeah,
little bit. I don't know.
exactly. That is, yeah, that's frustrating to see, especially if you've seen someone go through it and then they
Yeah.
make it out to be easy.
It's so funny. But I mean, it's not funny because I'm like, yeah, you must get so frustrated as well when, you see the things that you have to go through be portrayed so incorrectly. And it's just damaging because
Mm.
people, how are you meant to feel? I feel just quite insulting, really.
Yeah, exactly. And also some bits are almost like glamorized and you're like,
Oh,
well,
massively.
no.
Yeah, I know. Oh, lovely. You're making this endearing. Great.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with, I don't know, like something like OCD, they're kind of neat freaks and the
Oh,
kind of,
God. Yeah.
cleaning, tidying.
There's an app that's, I forget what it's called now, but it's the tagline is turn your OCD into a game. And it's like arranging stuff in a nice order. And you just think, oh,
Uh,
oh God. It's so painful.
yeah, these people aren't living
No,
this daily, are they?
they have no idea. They have absolutely no idea. It's so painful because, like the, and that's what's so upsetting is it's just, you have no idea. Like when you hear people say things like that, they have absolutely no idea the pain that this disorder inflicts. Like,
Mm.
it's in the 19th century, it was sort of referred to as the doubting disease, kind of colloquially in England.
Mhm.
And I think we don't really know where it came from. Perhaps a French translation was mistranslated from, because they were calling it madness of doubt or something like. But
Okay.
it's quite funny because you can, the whole doubting thing is a massive part of OCD. And I don't think people realize that. Obviously, I'm glad we've moved on from those names, but I think I
Yeah.
like to sometimes throw that in because I think people do just immediately now think cleaning and tidiness. And I think when
Mm.
you said this was known as the doubting disorder, then it's a bit like, well, how would you mean? Because the thing is, it just makes you doubt everything. I mean, an OCD, is different for everyone. There's a lot of different themes. They're all still OCD, but sometimes we group them just for ease of talking about them. So, like, there's relationship OCD and religion, like religious OCD and harm OCD, contamination, sensomotor, but like existential, there's just
Mm.
like, it can really attack anything. And, a classic sort of thought is like, what if I did something terrible and I just don't remember what it was? But the thing is, it feels so real. And then you like live with, like, mine really was attacking my relationship, and I only recently am able to even sort of say that because it felt so scary to me. Like, I could talk about other kinds of OCD that I was dealing with. Sorry, it's also OCD, but other sort of themes that I was dealing with. But
Mhm.
that one was so sort of that's the first one that I experienced, that it was just making me feel like I was, mad. I really didn't. I just felt like when OCD came, I just felt like I'd lost my mind. Like, I didn't know what was going on. I had no idea who I was. I felt like I didn't know who I used to be. I feel like, it was just a real kind of overwhelming sense, like loss of self. And
Mhm.
this disorder just steals the tenses. I was doubting the past. I was living in the past, relentlessly. And I was just, therefore, like when you're living in the past, then it like steals the present from you as well. And you worry about the future. So it just really sort of steals all your tenses. And I
Yeah.
think that's why when people use it, because they like something tidy and they're like, oh, my OCD is like so, and it's just like, no, like you had
Mm.
no idea. The absolute pain that this can bring.
Mhm. And it's not, people kind of almost say it in a positive way, and I imagine that
Yeah.
it's not really a positive experience for you.
No, it's not. Nothing about this is positive, and I think
Yeah.
anyone that's like, oh, but like Khloe Kardashian, she can get in the bin in the nicest way possible, because she has this show called OCD or something she called it, and it was her, like organizing a cookie jar, and you just think you
Yes,
have
she's into
no
that. Yeah.
idea. And it's that's how, because I hate to then say, oh, she doesn't have OCD, because, I don't know. And people get
Yeah.
undiagnosed with this for so long. And I don't want to say that. However, watching her, I watched 30 seconds of this just to make sure that I could be annoyed about it, because I couldn't be annoyed if I didn't know what it was about, she was talking to this therapist. I'm going to put in inverted commas because I don't know what that woman was doing to feel okay with
Mhm.
going along with calling that OCD. Khloe Kardashian's like, but I really see it as a blessing because, like, I just like to be organized, or something like this. And you think no one ever with OCD would ever say that it was a blessing. Like, no one would say that. And that's how you kind of know, because no one would ever say that.
Yeah, and it's not like like she's making it into a like fashionable.
Exactly. It's like making a show about an eating disorder and calling it anorexia aesthetic. It's so warped,
Yeah.
and people, it's so damaging. And think of the reach that the Kardashians have. And the problem is, there will be people watching her show who perhaps have OCD that have no idea what's going on in their head, and they'll never think that it's OCD because they think as well she's reinforcing this incorrect idea that OCD is about organizing cookies.
Yeah, exactly. It's so much more and
Yeah.
not that.
Yeah, exactly. Great if you're tidy, enjoy it. Lovely. But don't call enjoying tidiness OCD.
No. And she's got that platform and she needs to
Yeah,
do better with
exactly.
it.
I already stress you now to even saying she doesn't have OCD, because I obviously, like, I don't know 100%, but I just think
Yeah.
anyone that says it's a blessing, they haven't got
It's
a clue. And that's what
yeah.
makes me think, that she must not have it.
No, I think you're well within your right to
Thank you.
to say that. But I know what you mean. You're like, "Oh, I can't take anything
Exactly. I
that I
can't
say back."
say it. Yeah, I know. The stress.
I get you. I was gonna ask you, so
Mm.
for me, something I can do with kind of day-to-day living is I can kind of mask my autism and appear very switched on and normal in commas. Is that something you find you have to do? Do you have to mask your OCD?
I feel like it's funny, actually. I'm thinking about that now you said it, because I so some of my more obvious compulsions are checking the ground. I check the ground a lot, and it's getting better than it was.
Mhm.
But that is something that I do, and it's difficult because I can see when people watch when I'm like staring avidly at a leaf, because I don't do
Mm.
it discreetly. However, there are times where I don't want to do that, and I don't want people to sort of look at me like, what is that girl doing?
Mhm.
But in a way that's probably quite good, because that would then be resisting a compulsion, which is important, and you need to do that in order to get better. That's kind of what ERP is all about. Is ERP is exposure response prevention, and it's making yourself anxious and then not doing the compulsion, which is incredibly hard, and you have to start really small and work up. But
Mhm.
I think in terms of masking it, I think when I'm out, and I there are some walking, is difficult. Well, it was more difficult, and if I'm with my partner, then I do like check a lot, because I know that he understands.
Yeah.
Or if I'm with a friend, I try and tone it down a bit, but it's like a matter of toning it down, because it's it feels like I don't have a choice. However,
Mm.
there are points where you know maybe like I'll want to check something, but then a stranger will stand like right next to it. And then obviously I can't, but that's probably, well, not obviously I can't, because then it makes it sound like I have a choice. And with OCD, you really don't, but like, well, it feels
Yeah.
like you don't. But then, sometimes I sort of do then force myself to keep going. And I think, that's probably a good thing, because you need to, the more that we resist compulsions, the more manageable this disorder, should/will get. But I think
Mm.
definitely, people who I sort of meet wouldn't necessarily think that I had a disorder. it's just like living with it. I think that's where you really see it. Like my partner, obviously, it's very, I think, very difficult for him because we live together, and it's, he's brilliant, but I think that's, definitely, I'm under no illusions that living with someone with OCD is easy. But I think people, they don't quite realize the effect to which it affects my life, because it's always there. But it's getting better. I didn't speak to anyone when OCD first sort of showed up. I didn't really speak to anyone apart from my parents and my partner for about 6 months. Well, it felt like I didn't anyway. I wasn't trying to. I was terrified to engage with anyone. And I do wonder now, meeting up with an old friend or something. I was chatting with one of my sort of first boyfriend the other day, and we were contemplating, having a coffee and a catch up whenever is possible, with COVID.
Yeah.
But I remember finding that quite upsetting because I haven't seen him since before I was ill. And I remember just thinking, gosh, that's going to be really funny because I feel like a different person now. And this is someone that knew me really well. And I wonder if they'll notice that there's a difference, and I wonder if they'll feel it or they'll see it. Because like with my current partner, we were together for 2 months when my OCD came. So, props to him for sticking around as well, because it would have been very easy to be like, see you later. But he feels like there's not a change, but then, not a change, but like, in terms of my character, because I that's something I worry about. But, I think ultimately I've tried to stop mourning the life that I had before OCD, because I do find myself, there was a period where I was getting really upset, and because OCD is chronic, you can make it, recovery is possible to a point where it's more manageable, but it is a chronic condition, and it takes work every day, and it's debilitating, and it affects my life every day. And I was really, for a long time, struggling to come to terms with the fact that life was never going to be the same. Like, it's never going to be the same as it was before my disorder. So, it is going to change my life. And I was really struggling to kind of accept that and be okay with that. But I think, now I'm trying to not put that energy into sort of impossible wishes and try and put it into talking about OCD and, just being aware that I guess, things are different, and I will be a bit different now. But that's just the way it is. And I realized I massively digressed from your question. Sorry. I just had loads of thoughts.
Just think of the question as a starting point.
Okay.
It's all good. No, it's really interesting because you can pinpoint when it's kind of not like started, but when you
when it showed itself, fully.
Yeah, which is, I think a lot of people might not be able to sort of nail that down as such. But the fact that, I think anyone would mourn, like, their past self, and you just think you've had time with it and without it, which must be really difficult because you're not so used to it that it's always been there. So I can only imagine how difficult that is.
Yeah, it's a strange one, and I think I often wonder about that because obviously it's funny. Like, I've got friends that it's been there as long as they can remember, and I'm I don't know how to phrase it really. I'm glad that I did, like, have time without it, like, obviously. But then it is strange that it happened kind of, sort of just happened in a day. And since I learned it was OCD, I read articles that said the same thing. And I remember I found this article that was like, I remember the day my brain broke was the headline. And it was so surreal because I'd said the same sentence to my family. Like, I'd been saying that. I'd been like, I don't know, I just feel like my brain's just broken. I just feel like my brain. And then, seeing someone else that you don't know that you then learn has the same, I've learned by then it was OCD, and then I was finding articles, and the fact that it was the same headline, it was kind of like, wow, that's so strange. That's so weird. But that's why, it's so important that OCD becomes more understood, because I that month, I mean, it was like, to be honest, it was so sort of traumatic that it's quite blurry in my head now, but I feel like it was like a month or two that I didn't know what was going on. Maybe only a month, actually. I really realized I was so lucky. And at first, when I learned what it was, I was then annoyed that I'd had sort of, a couple of sessions of incorrect therapy, because it wasn't
Yeah.
helpful. But then I realized how, like, I learned more and realized how fortunate I was that I saw that therapist, because so easily it could have gone the other way. And because so little, therapists understand it seems, which is shocking. But that's why, it just, the fact that it came in a day was, well, it felt like maybe like over a week, I suppose. But that month of not knowing was really torturous, because I didn't know how to help myself. I didn't understand what was happening. I was trying to come to terms with the fact that I really felt like I was never gonna genuinely smile again. I was like, how am I gonna tell my parents that I feel like my life is kind of, well, I was laughing until I was 22 and now that's done. And now it's going to be misery forever. That's really how it felt. And so, it is a funny one that it can just sort of happen like that. I think a few people, good few people do have it that happen that way for them, which is, it's so upsetting.
No, definitely. Did you sort of turn to kind of say like Instagram to try and find a sort of community before sort of sharing your own OCD? Like, how did you get to the point where you now are kind of an advocate, if that makes sense?
I think that was probably through poetry, really, because I didn't talk about OCD for a long time because I didn't know, well, I say a long time, when it was really dark, I didn't know how to. I could barely, sort of speak to anyone really. And then I wrote a poem because I love to write poetry, and I think, particularly with OCD, I find it quite therapeutic, and in a way almost, I feel like it takes a little bit of the power back, because it's like, OCD, like, you ruined my life, but I'm gonna turn you into art right now.
Yeah, I got this.
And then some like really great advocates from the OCD community started sharing it, and then that's how I sort of found them. And then I found this, amazing body of people, and the community on Instagram really helped me, because they, I think it's so tight knit because it's so misunderstood. And I think that, we sort of all rally together because we know that it's like, oh, you understand something that people don't understand and you understand it completely. And so I think, and the sort of memes and stuff, my friend, her Insta is the T on OCD, and she does like lots of funny TikToks and really just proper makes me laugh. When you can laugh at something that's just so, it is like there's just pain really with it. Like, there's no good points of this disorder. And so when you laugh at it, it's just really therapeutic. Do you find that on your Instagram that people, because it's misunderstood, there's like a real kind of kinship, I suppose?
Yeah, and definitely like kind of lightheartedness. Like, if you see
Yeah.
someone else struggling with something, you're like, yes, it's not just me.
Yeah, definitely. What a feeling, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
really
you're like,
funny.
oh,
It's like, I'm so sorry that you have to deal with this as well, but also
yeah,
really glad that you relate. Like, really glad that you relate.
exactly. You're like, I'm so happy.
Yeah, I know.
Sorry.
Sorry, but this is great. We
Yeah,
understand.
exactly. Yeah, it's I do love Instagram for that kind of sense of community, and like you say, like just even like the meme pages, or
Love a good
just the,
meme. Yeah, a good
yes,
disorder
and
meme.
just exactly, because it's what you're living every day, and you've
Yeah.
kind of sometimes you've got to make light of it to, you know, deal with it sometimes,
Oh,
I think.
definitely. I think,
Yeah.
it's so key to laugh at the things that are so difficult, because otherwise,
Mm,
what else are you going to do? Can't
exactly.
cry about it all the time.
No, and that's kind of, it's hard to come round to that. Like, you can't always be sad about it. You've just got to keep going, which is
Yeah.
sucks, but
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? But then you
it
find a
is.
good meme and you think, right.
Yes, and then especially when you can share it with people who understand, because like, say like your other half might not like get it,
Oh, you're
and you're like,
fully.
oh,
The amount
I
of
need
times
someone.
I've shown Adrian something, I've been like, Adrian, look at this, it's so funny. And he's just like, yeah, I don't. And I'm like, oh, let me send it to my friend that has OCD. And then they'll be like, lol,
Yes,
amazing.
like you hit up your little like crew or
True,
like
exactly.
group chat of like, yes,
You
I get
feel
that.
me. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I've got like a little Discord channel where they have like separate channels for like hilarious TikToks
I
and
love
memes
that.
and dog
That's
like stuff.
that's so great. Nice decisions to do that.
Yeah. It's just I don't know, it just makes every day a little bit, little bit more interesting.
Definitely. Absolutely. It's healthy, to laugh at those things.
Yeah, I think so. And so your poetry is something you're kind of still kind of continuing to share online. Is that kind of good to feel your energy into?
Definitely. I think I mean, it's so hard at the moment. I don't know if you're finding this. The lockdown, I was kind of doing okay in the first two.
Mhm.
But this one I'm finding it really difficult. And I think the fact that it's so dark and then it's like grey and then it's dark really soon is
Yeah.
really a struggle to find any kind of motivation, because I've been wanting to sort of film another spoken poem about
Mm.
OCD for a while. But I'm finding it so hard to sort of do anything. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely the poems definitely help, and I like to do them about OCD, especially kind of spoken ones, because
Mm.
it's just, for me, I feel like people maybe will be more inclined to listen than if I just sit there and like just rant about it. And I'm so desperate for people to have a bit, not even an understanding of it, but just realize that it's not this kind of cute quirk. I just need people to realize that
Mm.
it's serious and that it's horrible.
Yeah.
And so that's why, and as I said, yeah, they do make me feel like I'm doing something a bit more, I think. Like they make me feel a bit better. Like when I have a really particularly bad moment with OCD, because it's so much more manageable than it used to be now, which I'm so grateful of, because I can be present in my days now more. It's still hard and it still affects my life constantly, but before I
Mm.
really was just not present. But then when I still have particular sort of moments or things that happen that are just really overwhelming, it helps me to kind of to put it into, to make it feel like I'm doing something with it, rather than it just being so awful. It's like, well, at least
Mm.
I'm gonna put you in some words.
Yeah, and it's really nice to like I've seen a couple of your videos on Instagram. It's nice to hear like your like intonation and like how like heartfelt it comes
Thank you
across.
so much. That's so kind. Thank
That's
you.
okay. It's just because, like you say, like it's really nice as a visual to share. But sometimes if you're, actually kind of presenting it
Mm,
yourself, it's kind of, more
it's like more
not like
personal.
heartfelt, but it
Yeah.
comes across like strong.
And I think you can hit more, points more. You can drive them through a bit more.
Yeah,
Listen to me
exactly.
is basically what I'm saying.
Please listen.
Please listen to what I'm saying about this thing. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of that like on the internet though, and it's kind of wading through that sometimes. Like everyone has something to say, but
It's true. I can't blame people for not knowing what it is.
yeah, but I think it's good to share like things like this because people don't realize it's not something that you can turn off and on, and it's a daily thing. Like I spoke to someone in my last episode and they have Tourette's,
Oh,
and
right.
people just think that in a 60-second like TikTok video that they're just like putting this on, and she's like, it's my day,
That's
it's
my
my
day.
life.
Oh gosh, how awful. People think that she's putting it on. How awful.
Yeah, she just gets comments all the time being like, oh, you're faking it or
Oh,
putting it on.
how
She said,
awful. Oh my
I
God, what
know,
is
and
wrong
she's
with
like,
people?
yeah, she's like, I'll leave my phone and I'll record myself for like 20 minutes straight and clip down bits so that people
Wow.
can see what my tics are
Yeah.
like. And people just assume that she, that is like a minute of her life. But she's like,
Gosh.
no, editing is a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, yeah, people
Yeah.
just don't
They don't realise. I mean, but
realize.
also, how dare you like come into someone's space and say that they're,
Yeah.
although then that makes me feel terrible, because then did I not just say that Khloe Kardashian did not have OCD? So am I doing that as well? Oh no. This is what my OCD will do. It'll be like, see what you know, but that, I think that's, but to go into someone's space and be like, you're faking this, is really shocking.
Yeah,
I
you've
hope that
seen
doesn't make me
seconds.
hypocritical about Khloe
Yeah.
Kardashian, but I just don't think she has OCD. I'll stop
No,
now.
I'm with you, don't worry.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the thing. You see a few seconds of someone's life and have an assumption is not okay.
Yeah, it's really not okay. You can't. I think people just are really thinking that as much as, I love social media in the same way
Mm.
that you do, and that is so great for, communities and awareness and things like this. But people really seem to think that it's life, and I don't get that. I don't understand it. People think it's like fully representation. It's like if you do anything now, it doesn't happen if it's not on blimmin' TikTok or something, you know?
Yeah.
And how worrying that people can just be like, I think what a cynical view of the world that she's faking her Tourette's. Like, are you
I know.
really? Like, what a thing to
Honestly.
suggest. How could you even think that? Like,
I know.
bizarre.
That's the kind of bad side of the internet, I
Yeah,
think. And
fully.
I don't know. I think that's why it's good to have breaks from social media for that reason.
Definitely on the old Instagram a bit too much.
It's kind of ingrained in kind of your day, isn't it? Almost
Yeah.
like you tap on the app and you're like, oh, I'm in the app.
Didn't realize. How did I get here? Whoops.
Yeah.
Was definitely going to have a break, and yet I've been scrolling throughout the whole break.
Oh, they know how to get us.
They do. Scary.
But at least if our feeds are kind of, filled with other people, and nice communities, we can kind of say it's
This is true. At least, it's not lots of toxic stuff going on.
Exactly. We're not trying to compare ourselves.
Yeah.
And stuff,
So easily done, though, isn't it? That's the thing,
Really difficult.
Comparison is like such. What's that saying? Is it comparison is the thief of joy? I forget who said it, but it's true, isn't it? It's so true.
It really is. And it's just everyone's looking brilliant on Instagram. I'm like, I'm just living my life.
I'm just living my life like it's golden. I know. It's so I think I really struggle with that side of it. And the other thing that has been really confusing me recently is like, I mean, I'm just going to sound like such a grumpy old person. But like the whole, sorry, just a warning. Like the TikTok world where like everyone does the same thing. I don't understand that. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't get it. It's all this, but it's like literally exactly the same thing. And I'm baffled. I'm just baffled. I don't understand. Because I just, it's one thing. Like, no wonder comparison is becoming more and more of a problem because we're literally all doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, it's just the same videos, the same sounds and songs. Yeah.
I'm so confused.
This is where I feel old. Like, I'm 26. I'm like, am I out of touch?
Hey, I'm with you. I'm 24. No idea what's going on.
Okay, good. It's not just
we're in
me.
it
just
together, fully.
What is TikTok? I don't get it. I'm like, I try and enjoy the content, but I'm a bit like, I don't know.
Some things are funny. My friend sent me some nice videos about moss from TikTok, which I really enjoyed.
Excellent. I love the niches, though. The like random,
exactly.
very niche.
That's where it thrives, I think. I don't get the other stuff.
No. The trends and the dances, which seem to be too fast and fancy for me.
Me too. Maybe I'm just jealous because I can't do them. Maybe that's what it is, but I don't think so.
They're just too complicated.
Fully. I'll embrace it one day. One day I'll learn.
Yeah, I need someone to sit me down and be like, this is the world of TikTok, Emily.
I know. But to be honest, I still think I'd be like, okay, well, I need to see no more. That's fine.
Yeah. I've had a brief look and I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't like it. Although apart from my friend that does all these, OCD memes on it, that's really funny. I enjoy those. She's very strong. But that's because she's clever with it. I just wouldn't be. I just don't understand.
No, it's so confusing. I'm with you on that.
We're in it together, man.
Exactly.
Do you write any poetry yourself about life?
I don't, but I feel like maybe I should, which you probably hear a lot if you talk to people about poetry and people are like, oh, you really should.
Yeah.
But I think I do the same sort of thing, but through artwork.
Oh, lovely.
Sort of you do, but I just do like digital illustrations.
Of course, because you do graphic design, isn't it?
Yeah. So
amazing.
I think that's how I channel. Like, if I'm like I recently did like a drawing about like how my wardrobe is completely full with clothes, but I only wear like 15% of
me
clothes
too.
because they're comfy. And everyone was like, yes. And I'm like, great, I'm reaching my people.
Oh, really? So is that something to do with, is that how do I say it? Like, is that process? How is it? Sensory processing?
Yeah. So I have like difficulty with sensory processing, which kind of feeds into the whole kind of autism thing.
Right.
And I struggle a bit. I don't know if it's OCD, but I have like certain kind of rituals and certain sensory things where I have to like touch things with both hands and stuff like that. So I do kind of get the whole kind of compulsive.
You understand the feeling of needing to do something, like you need to do something. Yeah.
And needing to feel the same on both sides, which I get is a kind of a sensory thing as well. But I can kind of appreciate that you're not in control of your thoughts and your brain's just throwing you this crap all the time.
It's just throwing you crap all the time.
It's just, it's throwing you unhelpful stuff that you need to do for no real reason, but you shouldn't, but you do.
And that's the thing, and that's what's so difficult, isn't it, when you know that you shouldn't do it? Like, you know that it's making it worse, and yet you just feel like you don't have the choice, and it's just it's just very trapping. I don't know if that's a word, but you know what I mean.
Yes, I totally get you. So I can kind of a little bit appreciate where you're coming from and how it just kind of takes up your thoughts and doesn't leave a lot of room for,
And then I find it hard to like judge my own thoughts as well a lot of the time because of that. I'm like, I feel like a real like loss of, I'm just so bad at making decisions. I'm just so indecisive now.
And I just feel like guilty about like really
oh my god, everything.
things.
Yes, I feel guilty for every single thing. Like anything I do, my brain is just like, but that's probably mean though. It's like, why?
Or you just overthink and like cycle over old stuff all the time. I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. But the thing is, guilt's such a funny. I mean, guilt for me is the worst sort of element of OCD and how it impacts my life. Because it's just so consuming, isn't it? And because guilt is that I was talking to a podcast with a lovely therapist. She's great, and I can't remember how she phrased it. I'm definitely not going to phrase it as well. But she was saying, guilt. I think guilt is so hard because it's the feeling that, that's the feeling you're meant to feel that tells you've done something wrong. And so I think when guilt is misfiring and it's, incorrect, it's really hard to deal with because it feels so consuming, because that's usually, the sign that you have been bad. I'll put in like inverted commas, when you haven't. And guilt can just, so easily like, have I don't know what it's called, like overactive guilt system, I'm going to say, but that's definitely not the right word. But you know what I mean? I think guilt is such a hard thing when you know it's misplaced, but you still feel it. It's like, it's really hard, it's really difficult. So I empathize.
And you just go around thinking you're like a bad person for
Constantly.
no real
I know.
reason.
As another therapist said to me, though, like, bad people don't go around thinking that they're worrying that they're bad people. Like, they don't do that.
That's such a good way of putting it.
It's funny, isn't it? Because they don't, children, bad people don't worry that they're bad people. They don't go around agonizing over the fact they're bad. And I was like, oh, yeah.
Why are we doing this?
I know. But it's so, I fully sympathize with that feeling, because that is basically what my OCD tells me all the time, is that I'm just a terrible person. So I'm with you. It's awful. Yeah, it's not fun.
No, I it's nice to talk to someone who gets it.
Oh yeah, I'm with you. It's funny, isn't it? Because I think whenever you speak to someone that, like, maybe people go through different things, but so often there's such sort of strong similarities or things that you can understand in everyone's struggle when you go through a struggle that's maybe less understood, or just any of these things really.
No, definitely. So interesting. It's so nice to that's what I really like about doing this podcast, is I get to chat to people from like all different walks of life, and there's so many things that you like have in common, and you're like, you get where I'm coming from. Like, that's really nice.
It's a nice feeling.
We kind of chatted about sort of pandemic and coping with daily life. I don't know have you found like your OCD have you had more kind of good and bad days because of the pandemic? I know you said like lockdown 3 is hard.
Yeah, lockdown 3 is a bit gross right now, but I think generally, I mean, for me, contamination OCD, or like was a theme that I experienced before COVID, but not that much. Like, it wasn't one of my main kind of obsessions, as it were. I don't know if I'm phrasing that right, but it wasn't like, I've always massively struggled with food preparation since OCD came. I can barely it's really upsetting, because I can't really cook at all, because it's just too upsetting, and that's something that I really need to do some like work towards and really push myself. But it's just, I'm just constantly so worried that like my hands aren't clean enough, that I'm gonna like kill my partner because I've like made it not safe, if I feed, like if I prepare some food that then he'll eat and it's dangerous, and it's just that's something that had always been there. But then since COVID, I think it did get worse. I do stress more about washing my hands and stuff, but I feel like, yeah, it was okay. I'm really feel for people who had struggled with that as a really intense theme, because you're told, but like, don't wash your hands anymore, even though you feel like it's, don't do that, like, don't you go against your urges, and then suddenly all of the government guidelines are like, wash your hands more, wash your hands more. And if you're already, and this basically, you're basically being told to do all the compulsions that perhaps you'd worked so hard to not do. So my heart really goes out to the people that was struggling with that as a theme more. Because it has got worse for me, and it it is hard, definitely. But I do feel like, I mean, I'll say lucky, in the sense that my OCD kind of, the other themes bother me, like, are more troublesome for me,
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting how you say that, kind of with the food prep and what you're struggling with like that, it's that your worry is about your other half rather than almost yourself.
I think it's always about fear of, I think OCD, it's often fear of harming yourself or others, and some people have both. Like, I do worry about harming myself, but mostly it's I'm worried that I would like cause harm to somebody else. That's kind of where mine lies. I guess that kind of links in with the whole bad person thing,
Because OCD often attacks what's most important to us.
So people who are really religious and have a strong faith, they might suffer from religion, like religious-based OCD like themes. So, oh gosh, am I not, being like faithful to their Lord enough? Am I not, being I'm not quite sure of the terminology. I'm not particularly religious myself, but am I not praying enough? Those kind of things. And I was feeling really low when OCD showed up, and my relationship was really the thing that was making me happy. And so OCD just latched on, and it was, what if you don't love your boyfriend enough? What if you're a horrible girlfriend? Which sounds, kind of fluffy, but at the time, when you're living it, OCD really makes you feel like you're just the worst. And, it can even get to the point where you shouldn't call them false memories because it gives them power. But you can ruminate over something so much that you kind of like are not really sure whether the thought was you panicking, or whether it was like true. And, it's just awful. You like, what if like 3 months ago, like I blacked out and I did something terrible and I don't remember. It's just horrible. And you live with this feeling of like, oh my God. And it's, it's horrific. But the key is, I mean, it's not the key, but the way that you have to deal with that is by saying, maybe. Like that's the thing that you need to back to OCD. Whenever it throws any like nonsense at you, you just got to go maybe, which feels so weird, and it's really scary to start doing it because it will say such scary stuff. But the thing is, the thoughts aren't the problem; it's our reaction that are. Like that's what we need to realize, that thoughts are just thoughts. They don't mean anything about us as people. They're just there. And if OCD is telling you some shit, then you just like maybe, okay, I'm not going to engage, but it's very hard to do. And I absolutely haven't mastered doing that. Sometimes I sort of whisper a maybe back to it. But, sometimes then you realize when it's getting when you do that enough, then you start to feel a bit more strength in your voice when you're saying it. And then sometimes you're like, maybe, don't care. And then you're like, whoa, it's working. Yeah, it's working. Okay. But it takes a blimmin' long time to get there,
Yeah. Because it's so easy to just, I don't know, because the thoughts are just like a kind of constant stream. You don't tend to interrupt them yourself out loud, do you? Kind of, they just cycle through, and if your brain's constantly throwing you negative stuff, you just think, oh, that must be true. Like
that's the thing. And I think, I mean, everyone has intrusive thoughts. It's just for people with OCD, they're sticky because we're just like, oh crap, what's that mean about me? It doesn't mean anything about you. It's just a thought. But, it's just because it sort of happens so quickly that we like flag it as bad and scary and like try and rid yourself of it. But, that's a problem. We know thought suppression never works. Like, don't think of pink elephants. Like, of course, you're immediately thinking of a pink elephant. And it's the same thing. You've just got to be like, maybe, and just let it sit there. And then, it will eventually, if you keep throwing maybes at it, then it will hopefully get quieter.
Yeah. Scary though to have to just even start doing that, to start kind of
It's tiring.
saying stuff back to yourself, like, you know,
I mean,
reasoning with yourself.
that's the thing, but I think what's so hard is that you shouldn't engage with OCD, and then I find it hard to know what is just sort of shutting it down and what is engaging with it, because it's so because when things that it say feel scary, like, but what if this happened? Because it feels so scary, you're immediately like, well, no, it can't have because this and this and this, and you try and start like throwing up logical arguments to it, and which is so, that's giving it power. You're saying, yeah, okay, I'm listening to what you're saying. I need to find evidence of why what you're saying is incorrect, and that's it's kind of it's a compulsion really to sort of start scanning then for proof that what the thought says can't be true, or and it's like you just have to be like, maybe, and that's really hard because it says things that are terrifying. And you don't want to have to say maybe. Like, a lot of people struggle with driving OCD. So like, for example, if you're driving and then there's like a bump in the road, and then maybe your OCD will be like, but what if that was a child that you just ran over? And then you'll be like, well, and that's the thing, because immediately you'll be like, oh no, I'm sure it wasn't, but that's not helpful. What you've got to do is be like, well, maybe, which feels so terrible and feels really scary, because then your OCD will be like, but you're not even going to go and check? Like, you're so irresponsible. How could you do that? And then you just be like, yeah, maybe I am. You just got to keep saying maybe, which feels so, when you're worried about being a bad person, that's very hard to do. Of course, I'm just talking about, I'm not like a therapist. OCD only, affects everyone differently, but I feel like the way in which it talks is kind of similar to everyone, but it can be about anything. And I, if anyone is listening that has OCD, I'm really sorry if I'm phrasing anything wrong. I just really worry. You know what I mean? I just worry so much when you're talking about something that affects a lot of people. You worry so much about phrasing things like correctly and representing it properly and that kind of stuff.
I always struggle because a lot of like autistic people say, like, they either say like, I'm a person with autism or I am autistic, and there's like a kind of not debate but like split between that, and I'm very like, I don't mind either, but
really,
some people are very
preferred, right? Some people have a bit of a
some people are very like, no, I'm not autistic, I just have
autism.
Which I find really interesting, but I'm not fussy, but some people are really like on it, and it's like, oh,
that's really interesting. I feel like that's I can understand it, I suppose, because I feel like, I think I would say, I have OCD, but then I guess just the acronym like obsessive compulsive disorder kind of makes more sense that way. Like, I feel like it makes more sense than I am OCD. Yeah. And I think for me as well, I am OCD sounds a lot like when people are like, oh, I'm so OCD, which is like wrong, So I think, but I can understand why people, and you don't have a preference at all.
Not really, but I don't know if that's because I'm kind of like diagnosed and a bit like, whatever is cool. I guess like, maybe if you're like, I don't know, you were diagnosed at 2, you've always had it. I don't know. I think it's very kind of, based on a lot of different things.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm kind of almost just happy to have the label, so I don't mind how you how you say it.
So when did you get diagnosed?
25. So
at 25 years old.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, late.
Yeah. And how do you feel like have you always had it?
I've always had sensory issues like since I was a baby.
Right.
So my parents always knew there was something. And I've seen like kind of an occupational therapist when I was little, and they were like, yeah, she's got some sensory processing stuff, but I didn't find out till I was 25 that I'm autistic.
And the sensory processing is part of the autism, or
I think they don't like diagnose sensory processing disorder anymore, which is what I was diagnosed with when I was 8.
Right, okay.
But I think now if you kind of look at like the National Autistic Society website, it kind of says that sensory processing and the whole kind of social and socializing aspect feeds into it a bit.
Encompasses it, right.
It kind of comes under it, I guess. But it's really interesting how like stuff like changes, diagnoses change.
So fascinating. Well, I'm glad that you sort of finally I don't know if that's finally got your diagnosis, Do you find that's been helpful?
Yeah, definitely. I found it like a really positive experience. And my assessor was like, "Congratulations, Emily, you have autism." And I was like, "You are epic for saying it like that."
That's really, yeah. What, like,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, definitely.
It's not a negative thing. It's actually allowed me to be a lot kinder to myself because I kind of know what's up.
Yeah. Now that it makes such a difference, doesn't it, when you know what
Yeah.
you're dealing with? It's not like it doesn't like change the world, but I don't. It does kind of change the world. I was going to say it doesn't. It's not like I was going to say for OCD, it's not like a cure. But but the idea that what it is so God, it's just night and day with it's just such a gift, really, knowing.
And like, just you kind like I walked out of my assessment thinking everything would change and it doesn't. But, like you said, like you have, it's OCD. You can like research stuff, you can read around it, you can kind of inform
You
yourself
can
a
know
bit
how to
better.
help yourself. That's the problem because OCD can feel so scary. It really is so hard. I had no idea what it was, and knowing actually, really, it really saved me. To be honest, it has, because I don't know how. I have no idea how life would have turned out had I not found out, because I really was in a terrible place. It was just terrifying. So I think, the diagnosis, or like knowing what it was, just just gave me, a sort of chance to be a bit happier. I mean, it's still hard, it doesn't change the OCD. OCD is still awful to live with, but gosh, knowing what it is, and just having a bit of like a sense of, okay, this is what's happening in my head, because it really just feels like you've just got no idea otherwise, just like what's going on.
I also think it means, like, for me, like, I'm just a little bit kinder to myself on the bad days because I know why I'm having a bad
That's
day or
great.
something.
That's really good.
Yeah.
That enables you to speak more kindly to yourself. So important.
Yeah.
Very hard to do. I'm not very good at the old self-compassion.
No.
It's a bit
It's
tricky.
hard to, like, big yourself up, isn't it? And
Yeah,
blow your own trumpet.
I know. Gosh, I know. Hence my intro. Hello.
Well, I'm gonna ask you as an outro to, like, promote your, like, links and where people can find you online. So that's
Ooh.
you're gonna have to blow your
Oh
trumpet.
gosh. Okay. Well, my Instagram is at Georgia_Natalie with an H after the T, because my parents decided to French it up. And I have Twitter as well, but it's at Georgia Unlocked. Little pun on my surname. But yeah, my dad came up with it when I was like 14. But I never really used Twitter, so maybe give me an old look up on Insta.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I have a poetry book that came out last year.
Go for it.
I don't know.
Yeah. Plug it.
I know. Oh gosh, I know. I was so lucky. I won a poetry competition to get a book published, and that's sort of how it happened, which was nice, because I sort of found out that I won in the year that OCD had shown up and life had been a bit difficult. So that was a real sort of nice way to end the year, I suppose. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Or I'll be in a London park writing some poetry when we're allowed out.
Oh, that sounds so dreamy. I'd love
God,
that.
I can't wait till we're allowed out. It's good to be safe, but I can't wait till we're allowed out.
I know. It's just been a long time inside.
Oh, it's been so long, hasn't it? It's been so long. And what do they think? May now? Oh,
I don't know. It seems to kind of be bumped every
time I hear something. I know.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this month.
Yeah. We'll see.
Oh, thank you so much. I can't believe we've been talking for an hour.
I know. Oh my God, it flew. Thanks so much for having me on. So nice to chat to you. Your voice is gorgeous.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, stop it. No, honestly, I feel like you should do like some of those like audio sleep things. I'm like, this is so calming.
Oh, thank you. I could do that.
You should so do that.
Oh, maybe that's a little like, side hustle. Sending people to sleep.
Honestly, it's like so calming. I feel soothed right now.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, that has made my week.
You're welcome. So lovely to speak to you. What a fun time.